So the other day we were talking about the war, if we can back it up a bit.
Yes.
So we were talking about at 13 years old you were going into high school.
Yes.
So you had no plans except a general idea that you might have done some painting and art?
Yes, because Jane, girls then, especially in our class, didn't go much into working in offices, you know,
Right.
that kind of thing. And I had they had a competition in the London area of all the schools there for painting, and I had one, and mine had hung up, you know, from our school there in competition, and I was very pleased about that. But I did love art.
And it was an oil painting or a watercolor?
It was watercolor,
Mm-hmm.
and but I would have done that. And then people like Stuart was ordained to go in the garage.
Right.
So I did used to help out the odd time there, the garage, after we moved back with the children when Gramps was a bit stuck. And one lady came in there and she said, "You've got the wrong person in the office, Mr. Coy." He said, "Keep your daughter in here and send your son out." I liked it up there. You know. Oh dear.
So when the war came along, then there was the phony war, so that would have put you at age 14?
Yes, I became 14 in November.
Sorry, and that was the time that you went out to work?
No, I didn't go out to work when I was 14. We went down to Reading. That's when I went to school down there.
Right.
And stayed down there. Then when
was that at Queen Anne?
Yes, Queen Anne.
And how many years? A couple of years there?
No, I only had a year there, and then came back when the phony war came.
Right.
I managed to get some furniture moved back, and I went to Putney High School. It was another school.
Up in town?
Yes,
Oh, so you still hadn't moved out to Bookham. Oh, I see. The phony war, everything was fine.
Yes, and the war, there was going to be a peace, you know.
Right.
And then suddenly when France fell, excuse me, and he started the Blitzkrieg, then we moved out again. That's when we went to Bookham.
Now, do you remember the first night of bombs?
Did I?
Yeah.
First night of bombs, yes, we had it when France fell.
Uh-huh.
They came over then. And you see, being in southern England, you've got an awful lot the first
Yeah,
night.
yeah. No, what I'm saying is, do you remember that first night?
Oh, yes. You don't
What
forget.
was different on that first night than all the other nights?
Well, in those days, you could hear the bombs coming down. They make that noise,
Uh-huh.
and you could hear them bomb.
And that was happening in Putney?
Every night from 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning. And then they used to ask you, would you go around and pick up any shrapnel, because they were desperately short of metal. And we had at the end of our street a pile. They asked people to give their saucepans that they weren't using or any kind of metal and put it on this pile. They were in a very sick way, Jeffrey. They weren't organised at all.
Right.
I think there was only 4 ACAC guns around the whole London area.
Right. Now, you had worked for the Young Conservatives. Was that when you were 13 or 14 or 15 or what?
When I worked for the Young Conservatives, when we came back to Bookham.
Yeah.
After you were born.
I see.
And moved in there and bought all the furniture.
And who was Prime Minister then?
Oh, God, Mr. Macmillan, I think.
I see. So it wasn't Labour government at that time?
Oh, no, it was Conservative. And at that, working for the Conservatives, I was 25, I can remember that. Young People's Conservatives. We had a garden.
So that would have been, what, 1950?
Well, let me see. I was 25, and that would be 1950, yes. Because the war fought. And we had a garden fete, and June used to go around door knocking with Bernard, because he lived...
For the Young Conservatives?
Yes, he lived quite near. And he was taking June up, and so we had this fete, and because we'd worked so very hard, they asked if Rowan, our 3.5-year-old, would present the flowers to the minister when he came to open the garden fete. I had a newspaper cutting that's got lost in the travelling now of Blair in his little coat.
Rowan.
Rowan, giving
The flowers.
So everybody's said, well, Heather, that's what started the politics. But conservatism was very different to Labour.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
anyway.
but at the age of 13, when you had the phony war and all of that, you didn't really understand the issues at that time. You were pretty young for that, I presume.
Oh, we understood the issues, Jeffrey, because first we saw Czechoslovakia, where we'd gone in the March before war opened to get our gas masks. That was before, and then when the Czechs just caved in.
And do you remember how you felt about Churchill when he was brought in?
Dreadful.
No, do you remember how you felt about Churchill?
No, we knew of Mr. Churchill, but not to the extent that...
You did later.
No. And then, of course, we all understood how awful Mr. Chamberlain was when we got so close that last week in September, the beginning of September.
As a young person, you understood that?
Oh, yes.
What did you understand as a young person?
Well, I understood that I would never be going back to that school. And
Right.
I love school, Jeffrey. I can't understand a child not liking school. You go to school dumb and you come back smarter in the evening. I can't understand people not accepting that. And I was always captain of the class.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 years I'd been in that school, they elected me, the other student. And I thought, oh, I'll get in there again. And I liked, we had various clubs in the school. I thought it was like, and we did ballroom dancing. And I thought it was just terrific. And it seemed so awful. Here we were just on the limbus, you know, we didn't know where we were going to go.
Right.
But,
And did you understand at that particular point in time that Chamberlain had made such a big mistake?
oh, yes, definitely, Jen.
I see.
Jeffrey, and we only had the radio in there, but quite conversant with that.
And how did Gramps feel about that?
Well, he was shocked because it was going to be the second time he was going to lose his business. You know, it's going to start all over again with him.
Mm-hmm. Well, how did he feel about Chamberlain and Churchill?
Oh, he liked Churchill. Everybody liked Churchill.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why wasn't. Mother's concern was how to keep us all together.
Uh-huh.
But,
Because she'd seen so many other families break up.
yes, you see, children, the little children in London got just put on trains and sent anywhere
Right.
with a gas mask and a name tag. She certainly didn't want it for us,
Uh-huh.
and we couldn't take anything, only a few things what you get in the car. But,
Right.
But people didn't mind that, you know. They understood they were going to have to cut back on anything, just because people in Europe were moving all over the place in the same situation. But,
So you go down to Reading for a year and you come back when you were either 14 or early 15?
yes.
And then what did you do?
And then when, I went to school then back in London, and then when we moved to Bookham, I couldn't go anywhere because the school finished at 14 and I was then 15. So,
Sorry, I don't understand that.
well, you see, when we moved to Bookham,
Right.
The
Weren't you
local
starting,
school.
you were starting high school, weren't you?
yeah, well, I was not quite 15,
Right.
and I couldn't go to school because the school didn't take anybody over 14. It was
What?
a village school. It finished then. It's
Oh,
just
I
a
see.
village school. There's nothing else in Bookham.
And in those years, not everybody went to high school.
No, couldn't. No.
So if you went to high school, you had to go to a private school?
Yes, you see,
There was no universal high school education. Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
not universal. You could go to a private school, Jane, or a public school, but there was no public school near us then, no means of getting there. And then
Because it was essentially still way out in the country.
yes, the only thing I did, I went to Leatherhead, and I went to a small college that taught shorthand and typing.
Right.
And I took that for a year. And then when I wasn't quite 16, I went to work because Mummy said, well, they were desperately short of office staff. She said, you've been there a year or whatever, and you can do that in the evening and go and help. So that's what I did. Worked very hard. Half past 8 to 6.
Now, when you were doing that, was it generally acceptable that kids at the age of 15 went to work?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, so we're talking 1939, right? Or 40?
No, more than that. 1940, 41.
I see. Okay, so most people went to work, and because you were now at war, that was considered to be, what, your contribution to the war effort?
Yes. It wasn't just your contribution, Jeffrey. You couldn't sit at home and do nothing. And as someone of 15 is perfectly capable of doing something. And Stuart had started in his office job. He couldn't stay home.
Right.
And
now, so during the war, the first place you worked for was a seed company, was that it?
he worked for a teacher, Stuart.
And what did you work for first?
I worked for a seed company.
Yeah.
And they had 5 different shops, and they dealt with farmers and all farm equipment, which was key, for the effort. But then I had a chance.
And this was still in private hands during the war. It had not
Yes.
been taken over.
No.
And then Bill Coy's business, was that taken over?
Oh yes.
Why?
Well, it took all the garages. Well, they had like Air Marshal, what was his name? He put his car there. Churchill put his car there. And of course, their chauffeurs were there. And then over the flats, there were more key people in the flats in the news then.
Right.
That came. But then they all got bombed. There was not one that was missed. So
that's in Queensgate.
In the Mews.
Right.
All the flats were bombed there. But they weren't repaired till after the war.
So if they took over his place, how did he earn a living?
Well, he didn't. You see, what he got rental from the government for the just from the garaging, nothing else. And all he had no men except one old boy who would put petrol by cans into the Churchill's car and Lord Marshal, whatever, I've forgotten his name was. But they were all there in a group. And that's all Dad had. He had very little jail. And I think I've told you this before. I remember before the war that we would go out with Dad, and he had £5 notes, little wads in his wallet, which was one £5 note was considered a fortune. I remember when he was going up and down during the war, trying to get up. Sometimes he took the bus up, and sometimes all he had left in his wallet was a £2. It was £1 and I felt so badly for him, And of course, when I worked, Jeffrey,
why would you know what was in his wallet?
Well, I think he asked me to get something for him, and I thought, isn't that awful? To work so hard to get that business up and see it all being smashed.
Mm-hmm.
How were you going to start again?
Mm-hmm.
You see, and that we were only renting Parkesa then, because the other house we still got the other house, but then we were no hopes of getting it back. And so that's when the older people who had the house agreed to sell it, because they couldn't take us out of the house because we had nowhere to go, and they had a place to go where they were in the country, and that was it. So, but people managed.
Right.
But,
So that's 1940, 41, and then you went from the seed companies to the solicitors.
yes, the last few months of nearing the end of, not nearing the end of all the doodle bugs had started, we were down there. I went to work for a firm of solicitors, 5 solicitors. In Ashted.
Uh-huh.
They still had their office up in London, but they had bought some of the documents and that out further.
Uh-huh.
And one man there, the accountant, he worked from there. He was not in the forces, and that's how I met Paula Shaw there. She sort of took me under my wing because I was just on 18, I think, coming up 18, and it was hard doing legal work on typewriters. We're not allowed to make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can type a whole brief this size. If you make a mistake, you've got to start the whole thing over again. And then sewing up documents. If there's any mistake on there, you have to go to the court and get an initial. So it was very difficult. But then, as the war was coming to a close, they decided to move the office from Ashted up to London. So the last few months of the war, I went up to London, right into the city. And that's when we had the big, the second Duke, not the first ones that came down before you knew anything about it. And we just missed one in Fish Market by London Bridge, because the office was very near, 5 stories up, and the building just shook like a rag, you know, and all the glass. But
what happened? It landed beside or in the building?
Yes, it landed very near there. It killed an awful lot of people in the London Fish Market.
Uh-huh.
It was really awful. But it was very bad at the end. And what a mess, Jeffrey, what a mess. Row upon row of houses down. I know when I used to get off the train and walk to the office, I had to pass St. Paul's Cathedral, and down one side of the cathedral it had all been blasted, and one of the side altars, all the angels were all down, and it was a real mess in that beautiful cathedral. And all the houses round there, the beautiful Georgian houses, with their big high basements, they're absolutely gutted right down to shells. 9 acres there down. It was awful. But people sort of came out from nowhere and went to work.
So how did you used to walk to Leatherhead? How did you get up? Or did you take the train at Great Bookham?
Oh, at Great Bookham, they had one bus in the morning.
That went straight up to London?
No, it went. The local bus went to Leatherhead Station.
And so there you get off there and get on
and take the train
up
to Waterloo.
And then you switch to the tube?
Yes, we'll go straight over.
Mm-hmm. So how long did it take?
Not too bad.
From Parkesa?
Yes. It was about 20 minutes, I don't know.
From Parkesa?
Oh, you mean on the train?
No, Parkesa to the office.
Oh, I can't. It could be anything, Jeffrey, at least an hour.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But because you got held up halfway, they'd stop the trains because of bombing or something like that, so everybody waited.
Right.
But,
now,
it wasn't a tube train we went up on, it was a local train, you know, into Waterloo. So then you changed over to the underground,
and that underground was pretty new then?
No, it's very old, the underground. It was built 40 years.
Oh, okay.
Very old, nothing new. And people have been sleeping down there.
Right.
So it's very messy. And poor thing, so dirty.
And okay, so then what you're doing essentially is you were working for the seed company for two years.
2 years.
And then the lawyers for a couple of years.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So where and how did you meet Roger?
How did I meet Roger?
Right.
Well, we used to go dancing, Stuart and I. Always had to go with my brother.
This was from Leatherhead, from Great Bookham.
Yes. Again, we went in a gang of young people.
Right.
They're all people that just going into the forces. They've been called up. So,
Right.
so we went over to Epsom dancing, and some of the.
So how would you get to Epsom? You'd ride your bikes or take a bus?
Oh, we walked down to Leatherhead and get a train. Had to walk all the way.
Oh
to
my
Leatherhead
God!
to get a
So
train.
Leatherhead, I'm trying to think. 3 miles?
No, it's about 2, Jeffrey. I
Right.
think, from our house. And of course, it's all blackout.
Right.
So we'd go down there, and I always went with, as I say, and the friends. We were always in a group, and there were some officers there from the regiment, and some of the.
So you were going to Effingham, was it?
Pardon?
Where did you go? Epsom or Effingham?
Epsom Rods. It had a lovely big dance floor there, and it was fun. So Stuart had met some. He had a girlfriend with him, and we all went round. And then I met Charles there.
Charles Lapointe.
Charles Gagnon,
Charles
one of the officers of the regiment, and danced with him. And then coming home, they said, well, we can get, because they were stationed right near us, and who did I have with? Oh, I know, I had a friend, that's why, with me. Her name was June Rogers. Now, she was an ambulance driver. She was a year older than me, in the London area, and she'd got a weekend pass. And she's staying at Bookham. That's how I went over to Epsom Bars that night. And so...
What happened? You went over in the ambulance?
No. She drove and she came down for the weekend and stayed at Bookham. And so we went over there in the group, and I met... Charles asked me to dance, that's right. And we were chatting with him and dancing with the others. And so he said, well, if you're going, we're going back. He said, I think you and your friend, we could take you back in the truck rather than on the train. So we could stay a little later at the dance. So, well, that seemed a good idea to me. So he had a whole lot of boys in the back of the truck that he was in the lift to. And my friend and I sat on Charles's lap, and my friend June sat on the Major's lap. I've seen him afterwards. We've had such a laugh about this. Anyway, so we got to Bookham, and they stopped at Parkesa to let us out. And in opening up the truck, the car door, it made a big bang. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, my mother came to the door. She said, and he walked up to the door. Charles to see me in, and so she said, Heather, what do you think the neighbours will think of you making all this noise at night? She said, good thing your father's still asleep. So he said good night to my mother, and so anyway,
But that girl was with you, right?
That was Charles.
No, but the girl was with you.
Yes, we were together, so we both went.
Thank God.
Yeah. We went up because we didn't think it was so terrible. I suppose it did. But anyway, the next day, which was Sunday, and they had a film show every Sunday in the mess. You know, the officers' mess up at Southey Hall, the house where they were stationed. So Charles rings up and he said, would I go up to the film show? So I said, he said, I'd like to come along and apologise for the noise we made last night. So I said, okay. I said, if you'd like to come down. I said, Mother won't let me out till she'd like to meet you first. I'm allowed to. So anyway, he came down, poor thing. He had the most limited English conversation. But anyway, Dad spoke to him. And it was quite all right till it was Roger who called it a limey truck. So then I went out with Charles for a while, and then I met Roger up at the mess there. That's how we got going.
You met Roger that night at the movies?
Pardon dear?
You met Roger that night at the movies?
No.
How much later?
I went out with Charles for a long time.
What was?
Well, it was very pleasant to go in.
Sorry, what was a long time?
Well, I suppose. Well, I got engaged at 19, married at 19. I was 18 when I got married. I don't know. I met Roger in the August. I must have known him beginning of the spring, I suppose.
Who? Charlie Gagnon.
Yeah.
And when I was just curious, how long was it? You said you went out with him for a long time.
Well, it seemed a long time in those days.
What was that?
You did with someone.
What was that, a month?
Oh, no, longer than that. But he came home a lot, and everybody liked him, so it was a
Sure.
very casual thing. And I knew he was married, so that was quite all right by me, because I had an English chap who was in the, I never forgot, his parents lived on the top road in Bookham. He was, what do you call those ones, fleet air on pilot.
Yeah.
And I went out with him for a little while, and he said, I can't understand you going out with Canadians, you know, and he said, I'm here, you know, kind of thing. And then we had another chap that my mother's knew his mother in Kingston, and he used to come over. He was in the Air Force, in the British Air Force. So it wasn't, I suppose it seemed a long time, but I mean, it was all very casual, Jeff.
Sure.
You know, good times. And we had the other friends when they came on leave.
Right. So how did you meet Roger? You up there for a dinner or a movie show, or how did it happen?
Well,
Do you remember?
He was on duty that night when we had a film show or a party or something up there.
And what did on duty mean?
On duty? Well, he was there was always an orderly officer on duty that see that everything ran properly. They had it in turns, so it was his turn. So Charles introduced me to him because they knew one another.
Right.
And so that was it. And
so do you remember when you first were introduced?
yes. A tall, gangling, very shy individual. Oh dear. And his English was awful. But anyway, we managed.
Okay, so then what happened?
Well, then I went out with, Roger said, asked Charles if he minded if he asked me out.
Right.
So Charles said no, he said I'm married, and
right.
So that's all right with Heather.
So what was the next, when did you next hear of him?
Oh, the next day, I think.
So he came round to Bookham, or did you have phones?
Well, he was stationed just up the road. It was very handy.
What's up the road?
Well, up the lower road, they were just 2 or 3 blocks from us, the big house where they were all stationed.
And that house is no longer there?
No, they took it down and they built schools there.
That was where the little school was that Stuart went to. So you would go up the lower road and make a right-hand turn?
That's right. But it was a beautiful building.
Right.
Yeah.
So what did he do? He came round the next day and knocked on the door, or what?
No, phone.
Oh, so you had phones?
Yes. They phoned from the mess.
And what did he say? Can we go out next weekend?
Would we like to go to a film show or a film?
And that would have been at Southey Hall?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
no,
great.
go to the local film. There was one in Bookham, in Liverhead, a film.
I see. And so when you first went out with him, did you go with Stuart and a group of people? Just the two of you?
Just the two of us.
And you were how old then? 18?
I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I had my 18th birthday. And we went up to London. I must have known him a little before that. Because we went up to London and we shopped in Derry and Tom's. You remember?
Yes.
Oh, yes. And did a little bit of Christmas shopping. And Roger brought me a silver bracelet in there with all charms on.
Yes.
Which I get in Jane now. I'm too old to wear that. And
oh, I remember it.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, she has it now. And she's very good. She wore it then, and then I guess Helen will get it. But yes, and that's how it went. And so they were there for a while, and then they got transferred to Caterham. And Roger used to get the train. And
so was Caterham far away?
yes, it was near London, Croydon way.
Was that north of London or south of London?
South.
So it was on the way to London, but a little off though, isn't it?
Off, yeah.
And so then it was...
One night he had to walk 9 miles because he'd missed the bus.
Uh-huh.
To go on manoeuvres. He just had time to shave and go. But, yeah.
So was it serious right from first meeting?
Yes, I think so. I liked him very much. Very pleasant.
And how about the family?
They liked him, and then we had a week up in Scotland together. And that was very nice.
You were allowed to go off with somebody?
Yeah, I didn't think Dad would allow it. I asked him. So he said, well, we like him very much.
How old were you then?
Well, let me see. Oh, I must have been 18 then.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I was 18. And he said, you know, Heather, I trust you to behave. I knew what he meant. I said, don't worry. I said, I couldn't look you in the eye at breakfast the next morning if I had done anything like that. And he didn't worry.
So you went off to Scotland?
Yes, we did. We stayed up in Edinburgh.
Was it nice?
At the hotel.
Was it nice up there?
Oh, it was beautiful, a beautiful hotel. And we were visiting what they call the fort up at...
the Red Fort?
Pardon?
It's not the Red Fort.
No, it's the where Queen Mary of Scots was.
Right, whatever.
The castle, Edinburgh Castle, that's right. We were right up the top there visiting around, Roger's in his uniform, of course. And they were doing the changing of the guard. So the chap in charge of changing of the guard asked Roger, he said, would you take the salute, please? So he said, so Roger said yes. So he has to wait there while they all do their stuff up there. And I just wish one of his mother could have seen me. But it was fun up there because all the Poles were up there, you know, they were stationed up there. And they had, especially the Polish officers, they had these long capes, you know, and their fiery hats and this kind of thing. It looked very dashing. And all the Scots girls were after them. But, yes, anyway. So we went up to Scotland twice.
Always to Edinburgh?
Yes, we liked it very much.
How were you able to travel? I thought travel was rationed. I thought it was rationed.
Pardon?
I thought travel was rationed.
No, you could get on trains, that was all right.
Uh-huh.
But it was hard for rations, so you could only be really in a hotel because they would have a certain allowance for rations. Otherwise you took your ration card with you if you were going to be there a week.
And so when you went into a hotel, you paid in cash?
Yes.
And was it...
Oh, nobody had credit cards.
No. What I'm saying is, so when you went into a hotel, it was... so was it the same prices as pre-war, or were they discounted, or what?
It was reasonable, Jeffrey. I remember nobody tried to gouge anybody those days.
Right.
It was quite different. But,
and the food was what everybody...
no, not much.
Right.
Everybody was in the same boat, you know.
Right.
Didn't expect much. But it's such a lovely city.
Correct. So after when you went up to Scotland, how long had you known him?
2 or 3 months, I suppose.
Pardon?
Oh, a few months, I suppose.
A few. 2. 2 months.
No, longer than that.
3.
Maybe 3. I don't know. Well, he had a leave, and so it was, and he'd been up there before.
Oh.
And it was very nice. And there were 2 other officers from the regiment who were up there at the same time.
So how long does it take you on a train to get to Edinburgh from Leatherhead?
Long time.
A day?
Almost, yes.
Oh,
Yes, there were 2 officers from the regiment.
but if it's young love, anything goes.
What?
If it's young love, anything goes.
Well, everything had changed, Jeffrey. You had nothing to compare.
Correct. So was during that period of time, those first 3 months you met him, was there always that thought that he was going to go off and get himself killed?
Well, everybody, that applied to civilians as well.
Correct. So you could have been bombed tomorrow.
Oh, sure we could have.
Was that in your mind much?
No, never thought about that. People always think they're invincible.
Except people lived a little bit more for the moment.
Oh, yes, of course. You couldn't do otherwise.
Right.
But,
So how long had you known him before he went off to the continent?
well, he went off to the continent in July. And
And you had known him.
18.
You had known him since when?
Just before 17. Just after I was 17.
Aha. So you'd known him about a year when he left for the continent.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about that?
Well, everybody knows that they were going. That everybody, the troops were going. So, well, you just hope they come back.
Right.
But,
And had you made any future plans?
no, only we would get married when we came back, you know. And then we decided when he got a leave, we would.
Aha.
And of course, he was one of the last ones to get a leave. So I did have a wedding dress, as you've seen. And his mother very kindly made the wedding cake,
Right.
which came over in 3 different parcels. So we got the top tier and the bottom tier, but not the middle tier.
Because that got sunk.
No, we got it in the end, but it was very late.
Uh-huh.
And she sent also the icing sugar. And the baker in Bookham did all the icing.
Uh-huh.
He did a lovely job of it. And we had several friends who owned pubs at this point, and they bought bottles and came to the wedding. We had a lovely wedding. It was just a...
And where was it? At Parkesa?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
We got married in the Catholic Church in Leatherhead.
In Leatherhead.
Yeah.
And then what did you do? Walk home, or there was a car?
Pardon?
Did you walk home, or was there transportation?
No, we got the car. There was a bit of rationing there, but you could get the car to take you there. But
Now, was the war over?
no.
This was during the war.
Yes, because Roger came back. It was his leave.
Uh-huh.
But he came back on a course, so he could get a bit longer than a leave.
Uh-huh.
And so we got married before he went on his course, and we went down to Seaford on the south coast. And it was a hotel where mostly service people were, because all the other houses along that promenade had all been boarded up, and because they'd been hit by shell fire too from Germans. And there was also a small port there when we go to get submarines coming in, so there's a lot of firing of depth charges and fire at night there, but we didn't seem to mind that. It was boarded up, we didn't notice it. There were a lot of other people serviced there coming and going. And then because we were late getting down the next morning, Roger was late for his class, there was an English Canadian colonel who decided to give him confined to barracks. So that when we all went back after the week he was down there, and he had to stay behind, and he was paraded to a general, you know. This was ridiculous. So, but the other officers were fun. They all carried my luggage, and at Waterloo saw me on the train. Heather, don't worry. I said, well, I'm not really worried. So when I got back, Dad said to me, well, where's Roger then? I said, well, he's got confined to the mess. That's a fine way to start, he said. Oh dear, but the brigadier was very nice, or general what it was, when he finally got paraded 3 weeks later, and the others had all gone back to the front. And he said, well, I guess you've had your punishment, he said, by being married, he said, not with your wife. So he said, I'll give you another 2 weeks and you can fly back.
Oh, wow. To the front. Yeah.
Poor thing, he was mortified. Oh, dear.
So,
But it was only
how long was he confined?
Pardon?
How long was he confined to barracks?
I think it was over a week.
A week?
Yes,
In the
well,
middle of a
He
war?
was free to wander around there.
Uh-huh.
He had to go up in front of it. The brigadier didn't have time to
Jeez.
get round to him. And finally, when he got around him, he was cross because he said he could have
Sure.
dealt with this right away. But it was a very nasty English-speaking colonel on a francophone.
Oh, he was a Canadian?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I met him, not met him, but I heard about him afterwards, Jeffrey. And honestly, I met one of the officers who helped me with my luggage in Valois one day. It was still the same. Oh dear. Anyway, but Roger was mortified and very hurt, you know. You know, after you've been fighting all the way up from the beaches through into Germany, you get some twit who's giving a class decides to take umbrage.
Right.
But the others all had to go back by ship and boat.
Right.
By boat and train, while he just blithely flew over in 2 hours to the camp.
So how much longer was he away before the war ended
He was
then?
away from July. I saw him.
Because it was a summer wedding, I
I saw
think.
him in the April. So he was away a long time before he got any leave.
Wow, July to April,
Yes.
almost a year.
That's why we laugh at these people who've been out on boats.
November, December, January, February, March, April. Almost 10 months, 9 months
Yes, that's right.
before you saw him again.
Yeah, then we got married. But
No, but you got married before he went back.
no, I didn't. I got married when he came back. When he came on leave.
Right. Well, wasn't
that was
it?
That was in the April,
Right.
and he'd been gone since July. So actually, since he went on June the 10th because he went just after D-Day. He
Okay.
had to wait for him to get.
So he went over on June 10th and then came back the following July?
Yeah. Following April.
Okay, so it's July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. Yeah, 10 months.
Yeah. You know, we laugh when you see these reunions after 6 months. You know, like the soldiers coming back.
To Edmonton, right.
Yeah, and the boys who've been out on the battleship for 6 months. Some of them hadn't seen their wives for 3 years, 5 years even.
Right.
And they came back and they made a go of things. That's what I think is so wonderful.
Right.
And no, we were. But you didn't have high expectations of anything, Jeffrey.
Sure. So how did you two communicate when he was in France? Did you write
Just
letters?
that's all.
And how often were you able?
Couldn't phone.
How often could you write?
You could write as often as you like.
So how often did you write?
I wrote. We both wrote a little every day.
Uh-huh.
Except when it got a bit rough. Rather rough when it got further in Germany.
Uh-huh. And so would you write and post the letter every day, or you?
Yes, that's right.
My God.
But they get it in batches. They got their letters in batches.
Right.
But just a lot was going on in England at that time because we were being bombed and doodle-bugged and.
Right.
You know,
So during that time that he was away on the continent, is that when you were back up in London?
yes.
Uh-huh.
But,
And so the V1 that hit next door to you, that was during that period?
yes, it was. And there were several others, but not quite as close as that. But I think the worst thing was when you went up in the morning to see the damage that had been done in the night since the day before.
Right.
But anyway, and I think the saddest thing was that when after the victory came, people were so tired. It's been 6 years too.
Right.
And rationing.
Right.
Food, clothing, rationing, and the women were tired.
Right.
They'd looked after children. And my poor nervous uncle from Reading, he got called up. He had never been very far away from home, and he hadn't any children. He was very nervous, but he was married and he had a sweet little wife. He went over and was sent out east to Africa and got torpedoed over there.